Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we'll bring you day 469 of Putin's invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Olexiy Arestovych, Lieutenant Colonel, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician, lawyer, and blogger. They're both still in Brussels, so they're recording this en route. Please disregard any technical issues, and thank you for your continuous support, dear members, and thank you, Bill, for your super thanks. Much appreciated. And with that, day 469. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Wednesday, June 7th. Time is 5 minutes past 10 in Kiev. Same time in Moscow. We're doing regular stream with Olexiy Arestovych. We already have about 62,000 starting with us and about 15,000 click the like button. Apologies for being a few late. I had another set of 3 streams today. One with Caesar, representative of Legion, Freedom of Russia. The second was with Andrei Piankovsky, and it just ran over a little bit of this hour. And this one will be with Olexiy. We've been communicating for 3 days now in person here, and we decided to continue recording, so please continue sharing, continue subscribing. If somebody does not see that in their list, you sharing that link, of course, brings it to the top. And please don't forget to click the like button. That definitely helps to promote the video. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do that to Mark Feigin's channel, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching in English. Good evening, Olexiy. Let's start. Good evening, Mark. I'm not seeing everybody. I'm still saying good evening, everybody. It's all right. We don't see them, we feel them, right? Exactly. All right. So let's continue back with Kakhovskaya hydropower station. You've seen there's a ton of different versions that are being discussed. Moscow, of course, pushes their ideology here that it's Ukraine. But now we hear some voices on the third side saying that, oh, probably water by itself destroyed this power plant. Let's disprove that. Mark, why? I'm a little tired of all that disapproval. Are there any kids in front of the screens? No, I don't think there are any kids right now. Alright, it's evening, right? Yeah. People want to fucking talk. Let them fucking talk. I have information from our military who got intercepts from Russian side, warning some of their troops about blowing up the dam. Will this information be offered to a large public? Probably. It depends upon our military command and political command. But definitely they'll give this information to anyone investigating the incident. And we discussed that a year ago. There was some logic that forced them to do that. There is definitely a logic in them doing it. They're covering their left flank. They're afraid of any advance towards Crimea, so they're doing that. Plus, oh, y'all 7, hold me, see how dangerous I am. If you'll continue your counteroffensive, I might also blow up the Zaporozhye nuclear plant. And all this pseudo-intellectual logic about probably hydropower station blowing by itself, breaking by itself, maybe the executor put a little too much explosives into this. So if they want to masturbate on that, let them do it. I don't care. I would say, Olexiy, that in the American press there are also now articles talking about Russian side blowing it up, that there is some information about the explosion at the station, and yeah, let the public sentiment, let them discuss it. So, do you think because of this event, plans of counteroffensive changed in terms of time, duration, direction? You know, Mark, in order to comment if they were affected, you would need to know all their plans. I don't. Okay, then how about geography? Just in general, and hypothesize. I always said that strategy is geography. And even though this direction would never have been a major direction because of crossing the river, because of lack of priority in this area, it would have been maybe a secondary or supportive direction. So if they are using such drastic measures to protect their secondary flank, that means that they're really not sure that they can protect even this from the secondary attack. And they've been digging in there for a while. They had trenches, they had fortifications, they had mother effers and a bunch of other anti-tank equipment set there. They could have held that territory for a while. So with the flooding, they pretty much flooded a bunch of that effort too. But indeed, they did preclude us from crossing the river or doing anything there at the moment. All right. Secondary topic is animals drowning. It's maybe not a first factor, but the secondary factor that is being discussed. Mark, I can probably argue to the contrary. Yeah, human disaster is, of course, important, but animals, they do bring a new degree to everything. Animals are helpless. It's a factor of morale. They cannot do anything about it unless they can run fast or fly or swim. These animals are probably even worse off than kids, because people usually save themselves and kids. These are the ones that are fully dependent on humans, especially cattle and agriculture animals, and even the zoo. And there is definitely a moral side of the story with these creatures. And people are now discussing and trying to help to whatever they can. Also, I published some stream from a Ukrainian drone that flew to a mom with children and dropped some supplies to them who were stranded and their house flooded. And up until that moment, until that information was published, mom and kids there on the occupied territory was not assisted in any way by Russians. They didn't care. They don't care about citizens. And they only cared about themselves. And even so, even about themselves, they only cared about the equipment first and then maybe human lives later. Only after that video surfaced, there are some rumors that they have aided her to evacuate, but it's still to be checked. And now we have some pseudo-intellectuals coming out and picking their nose and thinking, well, maybe it was destroyed by itself, maybe it was old, maybe it was an act of God. Guys, no, it was blown up. It was blown up from inside. Acts of God don't blow things from inside. We're starting a poll, and we have three answers there. Question is, who blew up Kakhovskaya power plant? Kakhovskaya Dam. First is Russians, second is Ukraine, and the third is Alliance. We have 11,000 already voted. 92% say Russia, 6% Alliance. Mark, I need to be consistent here. I'm feeling I'm going to be the only one still trotting this line. I want to highlight that when you say Russia, please do not unite the whole Russia with Putin. Yeah, Olexiy, when we say Russia, we mean Putin. Mark, for me, Russia is you. For me, Russia is Lia Hijakova. It is Garry Kasparov. It is Mikhail Khodorkovsky. This is Russia for me. These guys are Putinoids. We differ Chechens from Kadyrovs, right? So why don't we differ Russians from Putinoids? It matters that it has a huge political meaning. Let's use the right terminology. All right, Olexiy will correct the question. Thank you. Let's continue. All right, United Nations, Red Cross, and organizations alike, they are now suffering a wave of critique, and not only that they can help, but they're not. It's just that they're not expressing a strong position against Moscow and Putin. They continue trying to maneuver between the raindrops. There's a huge ecological catastrophe in southeast of Europe, in Ukraine, and these two organizations really do nothing. Discussing, people are criticizing their whole stance. What can you say here? I want to also say that Ponomarev is also another element of Russia, how I see Russia instead of Putin. I'm getting messages in chat. Why don't you mention him? Of course I do. Ponomarev is Russia. And answer your question, Mark. we already talked that modern world is not ruled by Margaret Thatchers, by Reagans, not me or not Helmut Kohl. Uh, it is managed by grey bureaucrats who got their positions, and these positions, first of all, do not match their personalities, right? Their overview. Exactly. They don't understand a lot of things. They need to be stern about changing the core of Security Council of United Nations. They need to expel Russia from there, and until the regime changes and Mark Feygin becomes the president, then we can bring it back. But until then, they can't even bring that question up. And when the question is posed at them, they start to wiggle and they start to say, oh, what about humanitarian aspect? What about citizens of Russia? And they use a lot of ways to try to wiggle out of the position. Earlier, that happened with journalism, when so-called standards of BBC were developed, when a journalist, until then, had to be a journalist with a personal position. When a journalist became neutral, a neutral voice on the screen who is just presenting you news, you heard one side, you heard another side, and you, dear viewers, make your mind. They lost their position. They lost the tradition of that position. And then the same thing spread to politicians, and they started to lose their position. And what is the whole purpose of politician, right? The whole purpose of politician is to represent political position. Why people want to listen to the politicians. Technical experts usually know better, right, what happened to the dam. Experts in explosive, of course, know better what happened to the dam. Military, of course, have information and know what happened there, and they know what's happening on the battlefront. Doctors know better what's happening in medicine. But why people are listening to politicians? Have you ever thought about it? Because politicians are talking on the level, or must better talk on the level, that addresses these value systems and highlights the result of these facts and events in relation to the picture of the world and to the general values around it. And that's why people are going to politicians, to reaffirm the position and the view of the values and the imposing on the world of that view. And that's what we're waiting from politicians. We're waiting for political position from them. And that's what our president said as well today. I was shocked that there is a lack of reaction of United Nations and Red Cross. And note that United Nations and Red Cross would be the first two who would be weathering the consequences of this ecological disaster. Because for years forward, the irrigation system is destroyed, and it will affect the matters of hunger, the matters of refugees, and who else is taking care of that besides Red Cross and United Nations? So, inability to answer a simple question, what happened to the dam, where last October Putin troops brought trucks with explosives, it's such a difficult question to answer, right? For the second day we are discussing that difficult question. I'm not asking you, it's more like a rhetorical question. And there is a bunch of proof, and our special services will provide that proof to the willing investigators. We know that. I think if need be, we can provide all the data, just they cannot present that information out in the open because it uncovers their sources, but I hope that they will provide all that to the investigators if they request. So all these Red Crosses, to not go into cursing for the fourth time during the stream, I'll try to stop myself. All right, our poll continues. Who blew up Kakhovskaya Dam? Number 1, Putin, 92%, Ukraine, 2%, aliens get 6%. 40,000 voted. More consequences. Grossi, he is also a rather bureaucratic figure, but he did mention that water reservoirs of Zaporozhye nuclear power plant are decreasing 5 or 6 centimeters by about 3 inches an hour, and they should have enough water for maybe a month. After that, there is uncertainty. Yeah, he's not quiet because he's the one to weather the closest consequences, because they're coming. And the question is he talking as a responsible politician or just to cover his ass? I would say both, right? Yeah, probably both. But yeah, you need to differentiate what part of that speech is CYA and which part is actual firm stance. So, do you think there will be a sequel to that disaster? Do you think they might do the same thing with Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, lower the water level artificially, and then cause the disaster? 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe three, I saw a message from military of defense intel services in Ukraine that they already planned to do that with nuclear station. But since we intercepted some information, we pushed the data out in the open, and I think that prevented the imminent terrorist activity there. We don't know if they will do it, but we should be ready to that eventuality because they are insane. They're insane not in terms that they're dangerously insane, but they're just banal idiots. Have you read? You probably know the book "Banality of Evil," right? Yeah, a famous book. So when romantic editors are shooting a movie, Devil's Advocate, they were trying to present evil to be so interesting, so charismatic, so tempting, and the devil is such an attractive figure, and you cannot resist his appeal. They're wrong. There's nothing more boring and primitive and dull than evil. So they're dangerous psychos not because they're brutally dangerous, unpredictably dangerous, that they're something special. No, they're just dumb fucks of the lowest grade, and you should expect stupid things like that from them. So yeah, besides Hannah Arendt's book that Olexiy referenced, I also recommend to read Carl Gustav Jung. He also talked about archetypes. He actually took Hitler as a good example, pretty good archetypical research, and he talked about the similar things. And I think Hannah Arendt relied on his research a lot in her book. Yeah, look, Mark, Zaporozhye nuclear power plant has all characteristics of the power plant dam. This object is occupied by Russians for a year already, and it is stuffed to the brim with explosives. And these dumb fucks, as I mentioned before, they managed to store missiles to MLRS, Russian version of MLRS, in the machine holes. So yeah, they can try to do something. They can probably lower the water artificially. It's a more sophisticated act, but they can try to pull it off. And if not, they at least will try to blackmail everybody with this because they're lacking military means to stop our counteroffensive, and they need to pose as much as they can. That there are risks and they're stronger. And today they were talking about negotiations and new political realities and that we need to freeze the conflict. We'll fucking show you real political realities. When, as a result of this counteroffensive, some of you will wake up, others won't. You'll see the real political realities, and then we can discuss. You know, Erdogan also came out and said, let's create a joint commission of Russia and Ukraine. And Putin already called Erdogan on the phone, and he called that barbaric action of Kiev the destruction of Kakhovskaya power station. One has to give them their dues. They are continuing to pretend to the end, like an actor. This asshole will probably be saying the same thing from Kremlin in Moscow when Russian volunteer corps will be at the gates of Kremlin. He will still be calling upon his sources and asking when will he get his money. So you know how my one of my tutors in the military training, how was he saying? Great Lieutenant Kamishnikov. He was saying that, boys, if your girl found you atop of another girl, continue dying to the very end. Even if there are pictures and proof and everything, continue doing that. And that's the old military joke, but that's what they're relying on. Their pants are shat upon, it smells, even Africa is laughing at them, but they're still pushing that crap. Ukraine blew up the dam. With what? How? if you're controlling it. Then why do we want to blow it up? To destroy our own fertile lands, to prevent ourselves from crossing the river? What for? Yeah, they're not even describing that. They're just saying barbarians. Um, when you're playing on these levels with that scale, there'll be more butt kicking as a result when you're discovered with your pants down than when the girl discovers you. Well, Mark, in the modern world, let's be honest, it's only Ukraine who can kick their butt. It's a long story to wait for any politicians out there to wait to respond to Russia. Very few countries have teeth left these days. Americans, Brits, and us. And what about everybody else? Not so much. The best they can do is just, hey, continue providing us with military equipment, because we'll kick their ass. And we'll finish kicking that ass into the furthest corner. We don't really care about their reactions, frankly. As long as there is support, as long as there is enough military support to our action, we'll continue kicking those butts. And yeah, by the way, Olexiy did mention that a lot in his messages here in Brussels and in one of the interviews together with Rasya Kovichena, Congresswoman from Lithuania in European Parliament and the organizer of Brussels Conference, Andrius Kubilius, a well-known politician, ex-prime minister of Lithuania. I'm posting that in my Facebook, a link to that interview, mine and Alexei's and Rasa and Andres. Please come check it on my Facebook. Video will be there. Side note from privateer, we'll see if that is in Russian. If it is, we'll translate that into English. And yeah, so that to clarify, what exactly are we doing at this conference? Because otherwise, some of you are posting in the chat that you're just getting suntan, drinking beer, and visiting brothels. People are weird. Let's continue. So, you wanted to add something? I'm getting messages here. Enough with fucking cursing, Alexei. Well, hey, it's the sign of times. I guess we also hope that there are no kids in front of the screen. It's late stream, right? It's almost 11 p.m. And if there are kids not sleeping, the responsibility is on parents. Our stream is 18 plus. You know, Alexei, after the stream, we very often bleep them, right? And I sometimes cut it out because, you know. All right, the governor of Belgorod region, Gladkov, that commented that on territory of Novaya Volzhanka there is no opposing forces, and he even posted a video from that settlement. 2 hours ago, Caesar was on my stream, and I would say, based on that conversation, that guy will get his payback. That governor will get what he deserves from one side or from another, because it looks like he's trying to hide from either Russian opposition or from his own bosses. You know, Mark, Russian bureaucrats, they never really get it. They don't understand that they will be punished, that they will be pointed finger at and called the guilty party. He is trying to show that everything is under control, that there is no more opposition in Belgorod region, but he'll be made the guilty one. They don't study history. There was General Pavlov, the commander of the Western District. Yeah, he also liked to play cards. Right. He was also the guy who was the commander, strategic commander of the tank forces, and he also pointed fingers at Moscow and rang the bell saying that we're not ready for the war. And he was actually fighting on the front. Some people are saying unsuccessfully, others saying actually pretty geniusly. But what happened to him? Yeah, he was executed by a Stalin regime. Absolutely. And that's the destiny for all these bureaucrats who are trying to protect Putin in their positions. That's the same thing. The less you actually would think about trying to play good with Kremlin, the more you try to flip the tables and use your chances to switch to another side, the more opportunities you'll have in the future. Because a good strategy is the one that opens your possibilities, that opens your routes, your roads, what to do. Because when you choose a bad strategy, just like that governor, you diminish your field of reaction, your field of opportunities. So If he would have switched sides, he would have made history. He would have made news. He would have had a whole different destiny in front of him. But trying to wiggle in front of Putin's regime, yeah, we know what will happen to his future. All right. Let's also talk about the ammonia pipe. Yeah, they blew it up for the second time, right? Yep, they blew it second time in Kharkiv region, and there's some smoke or something coming. And I'm not too much of a chemistry expert, but military are saying that Russians were shelling, so that's the accidental hit. And I'm not sure if exactly it's an accidental hit, but I think they're trying to create that picture that do not think about counteroffensive because things will start blowing up and it will be kind of apocalyptic landscape with nuclear and everything. So with that ammonia pipe, do you think that we should look at it in the same angle, that that's their main goal? Mark, the main intrigue of these grain deals is let us pipe ammonia through that pipeline. And they keep threatening that let us pipe the ammonia to our foreign buyers, otherwise we'll quit the grain deal. And Turkey already twice kicked their butt that they cannot quit that deal. And they questioned they should not be putting ammonia in relation to the grain deal. And what else can they do? They can explode that pipe, they can blow it up and say, well, see, since we would have broken that grain deal, but since we can't, see the ammonia pipe blown, so we cannot really threaten them with cutting off the ammonia, cutting off the grain. Let's just, let them sell grain. There's nothing we can trade it for. So I think that's that angle. To continue Gladkov and that theme, that's Prigozhin's party, modern Russia for truth, as they say. Milonov is the leader of that group, and he has 5 high education. Can you imagine a person with 5 high education degrees? Yes, Mark, I have 5, unfinished. I never went for diploma. Well, yeah, he's more consistent. He's got real 5 diplomas. Anyway, he's working on the decree, on the law in Russia that would allow territorial defense to have rifles, to have arms. Because right now they do not have any arms. It reminds me of an anecdote where inmates in the insane asylum are jumping into the empty swimming pool from a trampoline, and they're saying that if they'll jump well, they were promised that the water will be added to the pool. So that's what reminds me when I look at their territorial defenses right now. So, of course, his idea was shot down. It was not. It is not getting much steam yet, but they're trying to push for it because Kremlin is concerned where the weapons will go. It's not like in Ukraine where people were given tens of thousands of arms and there were no incidents. Exactly, Mark. It was very different. Our power immediately said we trust our citizens, and they gave tens of thousands of automatic weapons just for signature and ID information. And we do not have much record of any criminal activity involving these arms. Everything was used to repel the enemy. And what's happening there in Russia? I'm just looking at Belgorod and Kursky regions, especially with the marauders and what they're doing when the power becomes a little weak. I am made of questions what will happen when people will get arms there. No questions. They'll probably finish off a bunch of their local officials and then continue looting and pillaging. Right. Okay, next story. I think it's very descriptive. There was a plane flying from Delhi to San Francisco. And it was flying through territory of Russia. Something went wrong, international flight. There is a known route, so it had to land in Magadan in Russia because of that technical issue. And there, the passengers, and obviously they're not just Indian citizens, they're also American citizens, and they're posting videos. They're sleeping in some basement on some weird with some weird setup. They're not getting food or water, and they're posting stuff online with pictures, and are saying that we found ourselves in hell. And I want to say it's something. I actually visited India. I visited Penang. I visited good places there. It's an interesting country, and I've seen their lowest caste, the people who are begging for money there in the streets, dirty and all. And I was a little scared with some of the toilets because their toilets are mostly in the religious establishments, and you have to take shoes off to go there. So I thought it was kind of hellish. But when Indians flying through Russia land in Magadan and start posting that now we know where hell is, because they're sleeping now in some basement or in some school on some dirty mattresses, and there is no their cards do not work there obviously right now, and there's no good food or good water. So you can actually Google it for yourself. It's interesting. Do you think the position of Modi will change? No, no, no. He's now being pressed to keep longer distance with Russia. To people are saying that it might add more motivation for India to not align with Russia. And it's Magadan. It's the depth of Russia. It's not Moscow. It's not all that fanfare. And now imagine the Indian in Magadan. That's already almost a setup for an anecdote. You know, I can tell you how I flew to Lake Baikal once. It was probably 2008. I had a training seminar there. I went there to study, and the airplane was trying to land in Irkutsk for 9 times, and it was foggy. The airport couldn't accept it, so it lands 900 miles away in Bratsk. Yeah, pretty known place. That's where special forces of military intel is based. Yeah, so it's hot. It's summer. The airport is a typical two-story building. There's no water. Toilets are closed. There is nothing. Literally, it's just an empty shell. And the guards are just shrugging shoulders and saying, well, it's our usual. What do you want from us? And it's an international flight. There's probably like 1,000 travelers, and they're trying to hide in the shadow of the building, and it's hot. It's in the 90s, it's continental climate, and they're trying to hide in the shadow of a building, following the shadow as the sun moves. Some of them tried to sit on the grass. Locals ran at them saying, no, 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 please don't stay away from the grass because there are encephalitis ticks there. That's a threat. So stay away at least 5 yards from any grass. Some people went to the airport and then came out cursing, saying there is nothing there. And then there are local taxi drivers and weird transport saying, oh, I can take 4 people. Each of you give me $1,000 and I'll take you to Irkutsk. And, 900 miles is almost nothing. And 700 of it is a pretty good road. It's only 150 that is not paved. So some people took that transport. It was fantastic to observe. I was looking at it with curiosity of a traveler, like Italian or French travelers in the Russian Empire of the 17th century. Oh yeah, Marquise de Custine, a well-known literature. Then later, finally, they flew with us and they landed us in Irkutsk. And I was thinking, okay, so where's our luggage? And they lead us to that one-story, really damaged building, barely functioning. And then some very outdated trolley comes in, nearly run by donkeys, and nearby there are French and Americans standing and looking at how they unload the luggage, and they just grab it and throw it on the ground, and they're looking and saying, the eyebrows didn't just go up, they made several circles, several laps around their heads. One French lady nearly fainted, and the other guy's holding her and was saying, like, don't worry, I've been here several times. It's almost all right. Don't worry. Japan is not too far, just 3,000 kilometers in that way. So it's a whole story visiting Russia. And I have more. I traveled a few more times there. Probably deserves another story. Yeah, reality is pretty bad there. Some people are saying it's Russian phobic, but no, reality is much, much worse than these anecdotes. As I say, Mark, there is no phobia in truth. If truth is calling any phobias in anyone, they need to go to psychiatrist, probably psychotherapist first, and then psychiatrist. 35 minutes we've been live. We have 280,000 with us. We continuing our poll. Putin, 92%. Ukraine, 3%. And aliens are also keeping lead over Ukraine. Patrushev, the FSB guy, came out and said that Ukraine is to blame for the blowing of the dam. And he's saying that Kiev Nazi regime, created by United States and Britain, needs to be replaced. And status of Ukraine needs to be affirmed as a neutral country. And we discussed with you and with Gankovsky in a previous stream that one of the activists, I'm meaning Zatulin, remember we showed the video where he was saying that Ukraine will never be neutral and it will stay after this warfare. So all of these attempts and goals of the special military operation, so-called, are futile. And they will not be achieved, and Russia needs to acknowledge that and try to live with it. So Patrushev, with his activity, he's coming out and still pushing that same line. I think, Mark, they're competing in idiocy. Today, Minister of Foreign Affairs in Russia came out and called upon America to release the information about the murder of their president. Where is that coming from? And now this guy is confirming more idiotic line that Ukraine needs to be neutral. Just like my previous boss used to say, if one is an idiot, it's for a long time, maybe even forever. So look, Sweden is about to join NATO. Finland already joined NATO. These are the countries that kept their neutrality for 200 years. Swiss parliament voted about giving arms to Ukraine. It's preliminary. After several refusals, they still gathered together and voted for that. And anti-Russian coalition is bigger than anti-Hitler coalition at the end of 1945. It's only an idiot didn't join it now. And they started that war with what? NATO needs to be back at the borders of 91. They instead got their ass kicked. They were wiped with a rag that somebody peed on, and the rag was thrown, and they were made to bring it back with their teeth. So, and now they're coming out and insisting on more. They're idiots. If you cannot achieve anything militarily, who will listen to you peacefully? You came to duke things out. You got your ass handed to you. You got peed on you, and then you're coming up, shrugging off, and looking up and saying, well, we still have our demands and we need you to address that. Right, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. And I commented on that in softer terms than you did, but I did say that, do Russian troops stand near Kiev? Are they trying to capture the whole Ukraine? Are they at the brink of success? Right, Mark, we need to underline that and say they're as bold as Kalim gay people. I'm using absent lexic here, and yeah, we had that joke earlier that they have nothing to lose there in the Gulag lands, so they're getting real bold. And these people probably on the Nuremberg Tribunal will still be peddling that line that Ukraine needs to be neutral and NATO does not need to expand. Let your dear viewers, your fantasies, finish the topic for you about the Kalima minorities. Anyway, Switzerland is definitely a country that is built on neutrality. Their whole system is neutrality based, but the lower chamber of their parliament voted again to support granting arms to Ukraine and the rights to re-export of Swiss-made arms to Ukraine. Look, Mark, I did talk to some Swiss politicians recently, and they did mention that their unions of the companies and people, the voters who are involved in military production, are very upset at the fact that the whole Europe is, and America is making money on that military supplies, and they are not. and everybody's arms getting a very important in military field label that says combat proofed, basically used in armed conflict, which is a great add-on to any arm. And Switzerland doesn't have that story. So they've been upset for a while, they voiced it out loud, and look, as in a democratic open country, their unions finally pushed enough buttons and their parliament voted for that. And they leaned to the right, so to say. And it's good because Switzerland is not only additional hub of military equipment, they also are integral part of many other pieces of equipment because a lot of them have Swiss-made parts. And remember how difficult it was for us to get Gepard's systems on the front because they had Swiss elements. It was a very difficult story to resolve, and it took us a while to do that. And now these countries are coming out in support and actually opening the gates. So these countries that used to be neutral, Switzerland, Finland, Sweden, the ones who used to stay neutral for as long as 200 years, and now they're gladly participating in NATO, in an anti-Putin coalition. And Sweden and Finland, they're closing the Baltic Seas, essentially closing that window to Europe that Peter the Great made in Russia, Peter the First. And Putin managed to shut everything, all the achievements of Russian Empire before Russia, and canceled everything they achieved in the last 300 years. And now, yeah, he's screaming his voice, Ukraine should be neutral, Ukraine should not be taken NATO. And I think we're not too far from joining EU, joining NATO. I agree, 100%. You guys will be part of that. Right, so we're just, our eyebrows going up when we hear that. We'll take that neutrality, dear Putin, and shove it up your you-know-where and turn it there so many times until you won't be able to say that again. All right, on that fun tune, at the end of 42nd minute, let's conclude. We have 250-ish thousand people with us, 80,000 click the like button. The next stream is on Saturday, right? Right, on Saturday, if nothing extraordinary happens until then. Right. If anything extraordinary happens, we'll come live on before. Otherwise, we'll be live on Saturday in a usual place, and we'll have better picture, better background. And Olexiy is singing funny tunes from the Second World War about shooting up the enemy. All right, we had almost 100,000 voted. Russia is the champion, about 90%. Ukraine has 3%. Aliens at 7%. Well, at least somewhere Russia is winning, right? In the voting. But I would still outline that it is not Russia, it is Putin. It is Putin's system that needs to be taken away from Russia. Russia needs to be rid of Putin's corruption. We should separate that, and we should not mark Ponomarev, Feygin, Khodorkovsky, and Legion of Freedom of Russia with the name Putin. We should differentiate. We do differentiate Chechens and Kadyrovs, and we should differentiate Russians and Putinoids. We have a good audience watching us, they know, but yes, I agree. So see you on Saturday. Please continue sharing links to that stream, clicking the like button, and that helps. That's a little input that you guys can help us with. And do not forget to subscribe if you have not done that yet to Alexei's channel, to Privateer Station, and to Mark Feygin's. They're just a little bit shy. He's a little bit shy from 2,100,000. And we'll see you on Saturday, Olexiy. Hugs, guys.